Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you, GMAT Club, for hosting. And welcome, everyone, to this YouTube live session. It's my first ever session about return on investment for MBAs. So I'm very, very excited. I'm mainly excited to meet you guys. So this is a live session. You have the chat on YouTube. I'm watching it. And I would love if you can just tell me who you are, maybe where you're from. And if you know which MBA program you're targeting, that would help because I can talk about that specific program. So if your name is John from Germany and you're targeting NYU, that would be nice. And again, you can start writing in the chat things and I will be following the chat. So I would love to know who you are. Hi, guys. I can see you already. Great. Greetings from India. Hello, hello. Again, where you're from, and if you know which schools you're targeting, that will help our, for me to discuss that specific school. No pressure. If you don't know that, that's absolutely fine. Okay, I'm just going to give this another few seconds just to see who's on. Hello, Pix. Who's on? Siddharth, hello. Arti, hello. Okay. Hi from Pakistan. Hi, Raj from India, aiming for Stanford or MIT. Okay, Sloan Fellows, that's definitely something we need to discuss, a one-year program. Targeting ISB, fantastic. USC, great. Okay, great school. Okay, we can start. So, let me first just present myself. Please continue writing to me who you are and where you're from and which schools you're targeting. I'm going to try and address everything to do with top MBAs and return on investment and costs and how do you fund an MBA and how long does it take to return the money. I will answer all the questions at the end. I'll also try and answer some during the presentation. But if you have a question, you can already ask it. We're going to have, 40 minutes on the presentation. And the rest of the time, I'll just be answering lots and lots of questions from the chat, as many questions as you have. So keep asking questions and keep presenting yourself. If you're just now joining the chat, just present yourself, where you're from and which school you're targeting if you know. So just a bit about me. My name is Shimri Winters. I have an undergraduate degree in software engineer and computer science. I was a software engineer and I was a programmer in a big IT company for a couple of years before my MBA at the London Business School. Post-MBA, I worked in consulting in London. Then I worked for a couple of big IT firms as a business development manager. And I've been at Aringo for 8 years full-time. Before I joined Aringo, when I graduated from London Business School, they asked me to be part of the interviewing committee. So I interviewed to London Business School tens and tens of applicants. And today at Aringo, like I said, for the last 8 years, full-time, this is what I do. And, I help candidates from all around the world get into the best schools. So let's, hi, Raul. Hi, I love Can. I'm following the chat. Top 20 university, that's great. MBA marketing, Stern, that's a great school, of course. Let's carry on. This is my only marketing slide. This is not a marketing presentation. What is Aringo? Who is Aringo? We've been going on for about 20 years. We're really good. We're quite a small MBA consulting firm. And we help with everything from choosing the school till which school to apply to, till choosing which school to go to and negotiating scholarships and everything in the middle. We have very, very good stats. So you can check us out on aringo.com. We advertise all our statistics. I think from the last 10 years, they're audited, as you can see. So check us out on aringo.com. That was my marketing slide. Arti, thanks. Targeting Wharton or NCR, very different schools. Let's discuss the return on investment. So the agenda here is this. The first part of the presentation is a very generic part, but I want all of us to be on the same page. And I want all of us to know what is a top MBA program, why do a top MBA program, types of programs, very important, I've already spotted here in the chat 3 types of programs. So we have the regular MBAs. We have someone senior targeting senior programs that you need a minimum of 10 years of experience. And I saw someone targeting a part-time MBA. So I'm just going to discuss those. Of course, you know, who are the top MBA programs? I think that's very important. You can see the agenda. After we, you know, discuss, you know, a bit about that and a bit of maybe about the differences between maybe US and Europe or something like that. And I'll mention what is the MBA process. Then let's talk about the cost. Okay, an MBA is a very, very expensive process if you go to a top school. And of course, we can discuss how, you know, how fast can you return this money. And I'll show you different, 2 different calculations. But I'll also try and mention maybe 50 times throughout this presentation that I don't really believe in the math. So I don't really think it matters if the return on investment takes 3 years or 3.5 years. I think we'll all agree, at least at the end of this presentation, that an MBA is worth your while. And it's less important if the financials are, again, 3 years, 4 years, or even 6 years. It's definitely a very, very high return. And the economical perspective is just one perspective, a very good one. But we'll discuss all this. Okay, let's dig in. So again, I just want to kind of I'm going to talk quite fast in the next 5 or 6 slides, just so we're all on the same page about what are the top MBA programs. This presentation is all about full-time MBAs. Okay, why? Because the return on investment and the whole calculation of an executive MBA is different. So what is a full-time MBA? A regular full-time top MBA is a program where you need a minimum of 2 or 3 years of experience. The average is usually 4 to 6. The average age is around 28. You usually need a GMAT. Okay, so this is a regular MBA program. Let's pick one. Harvard Business School. That's quite a famous regular in air quotes MBA program. NCAD MBA. That's a MBA full-time MBA program. I just wanted to mention there's other sorts of programs. Again, I will less talk about them in this presentation. There's other presentations, or talk to me in private. You have my email at the end of this presentation. You know, talk to me about the other programs. I just wanted to mention, of course, there's an executive MBA. In other words, an executive MBA is kind of a part-time MBA program for more experienced candidates who want to work throughout their MBA. There's also something, for the sake of this discussion, let's call it full-time MBA programs, or senior MBA programs, or Sloan programs, if someone heard that expression. And this would be at London Business School, or MIT, or Stanford, or Foster, or USC. There's about 5 programs like this, which are designed for candidates with a lot of experience. Some of them have a minimum of 6 years. Some of them have a minimum of 10 years. Again, the average ages can be 35, even more, even towards 40 in some of the programs. Again, the return on investment calculation is kind of the same to the full-time MBA, so we can look at that. There's lots of programs, okay? So I put here, you know, there's part-time programs, online programs, hybrid programs. But again, this discussion, we'll talk about full-time MBAs. Okay, that was way more than I wanted to talk about this slide. Why do a top MBA program? Again, talking about full-time MBAs. Well, most of the candidates I speak to talk to me about career switching. They're programmers who want to move to product management. They're lawyers who want to move to venture capital. They're accountants who want to move to investment banking. They're just working in some kind of industry, automobile, insurance, commodity goods, whatever, and they want to move to something else. They don't even know what. Consulting, but they don't actually know what. Those are career switches, and that is a top motivation to do an MBA program. I would say that's the most common motivation to do an MBA program. I've also seen a lot of accelerators, people who have great jobs, they really enjoy what they're doing, and they want to continue in the same industry, maybe even in the same company, but they want to be in a higher level. They want, you know, to be more senior. And an MBA would definitely help that. So if you work in a bank and you want to go and do an MBA and then go back to this bank or to another one, an MBA can definitely help you accelerate and get perhaps a more senior position. I've seen this in consulting, in finance, and in a lot of other industries as well. So that would be another good reason. A third reason is kind of future entrepreneurs. You know you want to be an entrepreneur, but you don't exactly have an idea today. Like, I don't know what I want to do. I just know I want to manage my own company, etc. So if you know, an MBA is also a very, very good idea if that's kind of on your list. I put here me time. Okay, so you know, not, let's say you're 28 average. Not many people at 28 take out 1 or even 2 years to kind of invest in themselves. And we'll discuss this in a part of the return on investment. But there's a lot of me time in the MBA. There's a lot of self-development, self-growth, knowledge, a new knowledge, skill sets that you're going to acquire, a network that you're going to acquire, friendships that you're going to make, having fun. So I put it all as me time, but that's also a good motivation for a top MBA program. I've seen people who genuinely said, you know, I have a good job, I'm enjoying it, but I want to invest in myself a year or two before I go back, and then I don't want to depress you, but work 30 years straight and etc. So that's good motivations for MBA programs. And, you know, when we look at the return on investment, I think it's, you know, we'll definitely talk about the tangible financial return on ROI. Yes, whoever doesn't know, return on investment. We'll definitely talk that. I'm going to show you the numbers. So don't worry, this is the right presentation. But as I said at the beginning, as a spoiler, does it really matter? Does it really matter if the MBA return on investment is 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? It's worth it, okay? So there's so many intangible things, okay? And, you know, I don't want to tell you too much about my MBA because I don't want to cry here, but one of my best friends from school doesn't live in my country, is coming to visit me next week. I've been to 10 weddings from my class. I've used the London Business School network numerous times for business ventures. People have approached me numerous times. I've made friendships, business relationships. My wife has made friendships. Of course, the self-growth, etc. So there's so many aspects which probably are intangible. Okay, but I put here a lot. I'm just going to kind of talk about them very quickly because I think they're more important than is the return on investment 3 years or 4 years, or maybe it's 5 years. So the first thing is kind of finding your own purpose. And I think this is so important. So many people come to business school and they don't really know what they want to be when they grow up. You know, I was saying before, are you a lawyer that wants to be an investment banker? But maybe you're a lawyer who all you know is you don't really want to be a lawyer, but you don't exactly know what you want to be. So, you know, I think an MBA is a lot about kind of, it's a very general degree with so much knowledge and information that at the end of it, hopefully you will kind of have a better idea of what you want to do when you grow up. Of course, we said it's great for career switching, and there aren't many degrees which are like that. So again, if you're an accountant and you do a master in accounting, it's going to be very hard for you to get a marketing job at Procter & Gamble. Okay, but an MBA does open that opportunity for career switching. You know, I don't know where you guys from, but just from the chat, you know, we had India, and we had the US, and we had someone from France. And again, these MBAs are very international. So this is also an opportunity either to go and study in another country, and definitely to study with a very international class. Again, we'll talk about this, but European MBAs have 90% international classes. US MBAs have 40% international and 60% usually Americans in the class. Depends exactly which school. Again, it's such a good, you know, fun. It's just fun. It's such a good time. And it's, you know, MBAs are really a bit like a child in a toy shop. So many opportunities, so many things, you know, you just want to stay and be in all the clubs and take all the classes. It definitely opens doors, you know, to working in the country where the MBA is, and sometimes in other international environments as well, etc., etc. And remember, all these things are, you know, intangible. It's so hard for me to put a number. Are these things worth $1,000, $5,000, $1 million? So it's very, very hard to put a number to these. But I'll keep reminding you them when we talk about the numbers, okay? Because those are the numbers are very attractive. Okay, I'm just kind of carrying on. So whoever just joined now, our live session, Please tell me who you are, which country you're from, and maybe which MBA you're looking for. Again, in the next about 5 minutes, we're going to run very, very quickly, or 10 minutes, very quickly, just on some general slides about top MBA programs. And then I'll slow down my tone and discuss the money, okay, the return on investment. So what are the top MBA programs? Who are they? Well, there's so many top MBA rankings. It's very hard. You know, someone showed me a few weeks ago, it's actually on our blog, check out aringo.com/blog, that London Business School is ranked #1 in the world. I was a bit surprised and proud, but surprised. But then I discovered it was on a ranking that, you know, I didn't even know. There's so many rankings in the world. Usually people do look at the Financial Times MBA ranking and then the US News MBA ranking. But as you can see, there's also the Bloomberg and Economist and Forbes and QS and et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots of MBA rankings. And what this means is that there's more than 10 top 10 MBA schools, okay? So I know my maths isn't so good, but if we look just at the US, okay, I put here 15 schools. And again, I could have put 20. And from my perspective, all these schools are top 10 schools. Okay, so of course, you know, if we look at Stanford and Harvard and Wharton and Chicago, but, you know, what about NYU? I didn't even put Duke here and Cornell and Berkeley and Michigan. And all these are top 10 schools in at least 2 or 3 of the top rankings. So there's more than 10 top 10 schools. When I look at Europe, I think the situation is kind of the same. There's different rankings in Europe and for the European schools. And again, I mentioned here 10 schools, but a lot of these schools are ranked in the top 10 or maybe in the top 20 global MBA schools. So I think there's probably, if I take Europe and the US, probably around 25 or 30 top 10 schools when I look at accumulated MBA rankings. So there's a lot of top schools. What are the differences between the schools? Well, the top US schools are very, very famous. Now, all of us have watched a Netflix series where the son of the main character goes to college in UCLA or in Cornell or in, I don't know where, Harvard. Okay, so the thing is with the US schools, they're very big. They've been going on for 100 to 200 years. And they're probably very famous in most topics. Okay, so NYU, I think, has 20,000 students every year. Very big school, and it has everything: journalism, law, geography, history, and MBA programs. Undergraduate, graduate, PhDs. So the US schools are very famous and very big. This doesn't mean that the EU schools, European schools, aren't good. Even if you haven't heard of them, it's mainly because they only do business. So INSEAD was ranked #1 in the 3 or 4 out of the last 5 years on the Financial Times MBA global ranking, #1 in the world. But still, my mother probably hasn't heard of INSEAD, and that's fine because INSEAD only does business. Okay, so look at the rankings, look at the different schools. Even if you haven't heard of the schools, that doesn't mean they're not good schools. I think I mentioned this before, that the European schools are a bit more international. And this is important for our return on investment. Most of the Europeans, or all of the European schools, the MBA degree is between 1 year and 1.5 years, where most of the US programs, again, this isn't all of them, but most of them, the MBA programs are 2 years. Yes, there's some exceptions with a 1-year MBA. And again, this is something we need to look at, because if we just look at financials, obviously, the shorter the MBA is, the better the return on, or the faster the return on investment is, right? How do you decide between MBAs? This is a question I get a lot. And first of all, it's a very, very personal question, and only you can kind of decide, you know, where would you like to apply to. So I'm never going to try and convince you, oh, you should not apply to NYU. It's a rubbish school. No, it's an amazing school. Ultimately, there's a few ways to think about it. I actually, you know, I put here 3 different ways, but I actually like the middle way. I come from a perspective saying most top MBA programs, especially international ones, will teach kind of the same courses. And a lot of the job opportunities will be very similar. I'll show you this later. And I'll even make kind of the same salaries. So the main difference between Berkeley and NYU, one's outside San Francisco and one's in New York, is the location. That's the main difference. Okay. There is another difference. Okay, you can look at the school ranking, but you'll see the rankings kind of similar. And I showed you before that there's 30 programs in the top 10. So a lot of the rankings are kind of similar. And another thing is the cost of the program. Maybe you got scholarship in one of them. So, I think I usually less look at a certain course that's being taught or a certain recruiter, because these, if you look at the top recruiters, they're very similar from all the top schools. I'll show you a slide about that. Class size, teaching methods, I kind of say, okay, I'm going to put all these aside or give them quite a low weight in my Excel. And my main weight would be the location. But of course, if you have a specific reasoning for a school, go for that, okay? If someone's going with a spouse, okay? Happy wife, happy life, okay? If your spouse is sad because you're in the MBA, but it's in the middle of nowhere and he or she are sitting at home all day and doing nothing, your life will also be miserable. So you want your spouse to be on board with wherever you're going to. If there's a very specific recruiter that their headquarters are in Austin, of course, there's an advantage to go for an MBA in Austin versus to go for an MBA in France. Okay, so again, we go back a bit to the location when I think about recruiters. But again, you can kind of record this slide, and this YouTube is going to be on YouTube, but kind of think, what's important for me? How do I decide between the programs? Okay, again, I'm trying to run quickly in the generic slide so we get to the cost and how does someone get the return on investment. Of course, applying to an MBA, Tesla, good idea. There's so many headquarters in Austin today, so it's actually hard to say who I was thinking about, but a lot of the big California companies are moving to Austin. Great place and a good business school, McCombs Austin. Again, applying to an MBA takes a long time, and you need the prerequisites where, of course, an undergraduate degree, but if you have that, the longest prerequisite is probably a GMAT or GRE. There's some people here in the chat. So whoever's taken the GMAT, can you just give us like, how long did it take you to prepare for the GMAT? So if you took the test without preparing, maybe just write 0 days. And if you've been preparing for 6 months, so write 6 months. Can some people tell us how long it took on the chat? I'm going to sip from my tea, and while you tell us how long it takes. So I think I worked on my GMAT for about 4 months, I think. And that was quite quick, I think. Uma, you said you had a 720. Artie's saying 6 months. That sounds about right, Artie. Okay. Maybe you can tell us how much you scored, guys. Also, if you don't mind, of course. So yes, 3 months and counting, Ahmed. Yes. So, people come into the GMAT, even very, people who work with very analytical people, and the GMAT can take 3 months, 6 months. I've seen 9 months. I've seen people take it, work on it for a year. The reason is these top schools are very competitive. Okay, Raj, you're a star, 750 with 3 months. So that's amazing. So these schools are very competitive. And especially if you come from maybe quite a common background or an overrepresented background, you really need to score above the school averages. And, school averages can be 730. So this is, a tough score to beat. If you do have these prerequisites, thanks, Brooker, for telling us 2 months, and Pix, come on, 3 months, you can do it. Don't give up now. So apart from the GMAT and the other prerequisites, then you actually have to write applications. This can also take, we usually recommend people to work with us for 3 months because some schools, NCAD, have 7 essays. 7 essays. Okay, Stanford have 2 essays, but they have 3 optional essays. And if you're planning to answer those, that's 5 essays. Add this, to recommendations. Maybe you want to tell your recommender a couple of things about yourself and prepare them. Add this to your MBA resume. Add this to actually doing research on the schools and explaining, and deciding which schools and why. So all this takes a long time. So obviously don't wait till the last minute. I think this is I was going to say there's one more slide before we talk about the money, but forget that one slide. Here we are. Let's talk about the money. Okay, so I promised you I'll talk very fast. And now I'm going to talk very slowly. Now we're going to talk about the money. Okay, so an MBA, an international MBA in the US or in the EU is very, very expensive. I didn't add here, Canada, Australia, Singapore, India. Okay, so but I think once we discuss the different methodologies of how to calculate the return on investment, obviously you choose whichever MBA and do a little Excel for yourself. So an MBA in the US is very, very expensive. It can be anywhere between 60 to 70 plus, 72, 73, 75, I think, $1,000 a year. And remember, the MBAs in the US are 2 years. So the tuition, up to $150,000. That's a lot of money. A lot of money. The European programs, again, the top European programs. I love the chat. Not recommended. I agree. The top European programs, maybe a whole MBA isn't recommended. I'm not sure. Are 1 year or 1.5 years, and the tuition is between 80,000 euros to 100,000 euros in total. Okay, so obviously, again, this is obvious, but we'll look at the numbers. If you do a 1 year MBA, of course, the return on investment will be much faster. Is it the same or not? I'll show you the numbers soon. So whoever's doing here in Excel with their return on investment, there's different ways to calculate it, which I'll show you. But definitely the first line should be the cost of the MBA, right? I mean, that makes sense, the tuition cost. Is the second line cost of living? Well, we'll discuss that, but let's just talk generally. Some of these top MBAs are in very, very expensive locations. San Francisco, New York, London, Boston. Okay, these are very expensive locations. And it all depends. Do you want to live underground in a studio, or do you want to live, in a 5-room penthouse? But I think the minimum cost of living in somewhere like New York, the minimum for one person is easily $40,000, easily. Okay, and that's very minimum. So again, this can cost $20,000 to $50,000 a year. Again, there's a huge difference between, I put here Cambridge. I saw on the Cambridge website, they say it's around $20,000 a year. That sounds quite cheap, even for Cambridge. So that sounds not a lot. And again, start going up from there. So if, from 20, Madrid can cost maybe 30. Fontainebleau, INSEAD, it's a 10-month degree. So maybe that's 25. I don't know. Euro, dollar, exchange rates are changing. Euro is quite low right now. It's $1. So it really depends. Again, if you will see, I love Cannes. I also love penthouses. I'll give you my tour of my penthouse later. So as you can see, this is the cost, but still the cost of living is important. But again, it's, as you can see, it's not the main number here. The main number is probably tuition. How does someone pay for this? So again, if we look at, I'll show you in the next slide, but if we look at Stanford, okay, so take $150,000 plus, $50,000 per year cost of living. That's $250,000. So of course, if you're rich, if you have rich parents, if you have a rich uncle, if you just won the lottery, that's the best way to fund an MBA, just to have lots of money. Most people don't. Of course, if you can get some money from your company in some way, that would be great. Most people don't get that either. And then they fund their MBA either with some kind of scholarship, and it can be a financial aid scholarship or merit-based scholarship. Both of these scholarships they come from the school. That means you have to first get into Stanford before you get the scholarship from Stanford. And you won't know if you receive a scholarship before you get admissions. So first you need to get admitted, and only then So, there's a bit of a chicken and egg, because if you don't want to go without a scholarship, but you won't know about this before you get admitted. So, it's a bit of a problem. And most candidates also take out loans. So even if you got a partial scholarship, you might need some kind of loan to make up for the rest of the money, to raise all this money. Luckily, there's lots and lots of people that want to give money, to lend money, of course, to candidates who get into top MBA programs. Again, talk to me after this, but there's lots of people, lots of different companies who would love to give you a big loan, and you can borrow this. Obviously, there's the interest rates, etc. So you need to check. And obviously, the best is to get in with a full scholarship. I think Aringo had last year 16 candidates with a full ride scholarship, so 100% scholarship. I think around 56% of our I don't think I know, 56% of our candidates got some sort of scholarship. I have to admit, I won't embarrass them, but there were 2 programs who gave, I think it was $10,000 or $12,000, which was, come on, show me the money. Like, that was a bit low. But a lot of the other scholarships were $30,000, $40,000, 50. Some of them were 30, 40 per year times 2, which is quite nice. That's already nearly 50% of the tuition. And like I said, we also had quite a few candidates with 100%. This depends where you're applying to, what your GMAT is, what your profile is, diversity, and 100 other factors. But generally speaking, and this is very general, the better your application is, the higher your chances are for a scholarship. Again, not 100% correct, because there's also diversity, and there's also which country you come from, because sometimes there's specific scholarships for people that have a specific origin. But generally speaking, the more attractive you are in your application process, let's just say high GMAT, that can also help you get a good scholarship. Most of the scholarships are school specific. That means if you apply to Chicago, you're hoping that Chicago will give you a scholarship. Why would they do it? Because they have lots of money. And the money is dedicated, is painted for scholarships. So I'm a London Business School graduate. I get every month an email from London Business School, sometimes a phone call. How much do you want to donate this month? And, do you want it to be a high sum and we'll put a plaque with your name on? Do you want it to be a very high sum? We'll put a big plaque. Do you want to, and there was one donation of £50 million to London Business School. So, and the US schools even have, bigger donations and lots of money. So they have money for scholarships. And again, the more attractive your profile is and the more attractive your profile is for admissions, the better chance you have for scholarship. Okay, so let's just compare some of the costs. I think we kind of discussed them. But if by the way, this is with an old euro dollar. So maybe if you today look at the euros and the pounds, that, there might be a 2, 3, 5% change. But basically, if we look at the 2-year MBA program in the US, yes, we're talking around $240,000 of tuition plus cost of living. Why? Because the tuition can be $150,000. Living in New York or living in San Francisco or living in Boston is really expensive. So the tuition plus cost of living can be $230,000, $240,000. Again, depends. Penthouse, what did we say? Underground basement. If you do it in Europe, the MBA per year might be more expensive, but the MBA might only be 1 year. For example, INSEAD is a 10-month MBA, and it might be more expensive per month, but you will finish it much quicker, and the total cost will be less. And I just put here Cambridge, Judge Business School is Cambridge, as an example of a place which isn't that expensive to live in, and it's a 1-year MBA, and you can do the entire MBA with plus cost of living expenses in under 100K. Okay, so that's just an example. By the way, there's much, much cheaper MBA programs, but I'm only referring to top 10 MBA programs. And in the top 10, in all the 30 top 10 MBA programs, these are kind of the prices. Okay, so of course, if you look at Connecticut Community College, something, that will be a much, much cheaper option. But again, I don't think you want to study in that place. I hope there isn't a real place like that. Okay, so that's a bit on the cost. Soon we'll do a little calculation, okay? Don't worry, and we'll try and find out, is an MBA worth it? This is a really horrible slide because I can see it hasn't worked out in this presentation, so I'm very, very sorry. But this shows where top MBA where top MBA alumni and so top MBA graduates go and work. So I'm just going to read you the different colors. So again, I'm sorry, I can see something didn't work here in this presentation. So I'm starting from the bottom yellow, that's tech. Okay, so a huge portion of MBA graduates go and work at tech, specifically companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, big companies that usually employ product managers, business development managers, marketing managers. And that's a huge, huge industry growing all the time. I just looked at 2 programs lately. I looked at Kellogg in Northwestern and I think it was 27 or 28% of MBAs from last year, from graduates from last year, went to work for tech companies. That's quite a, just under a third. If I look at UCLA, which is in Los Angeles, maybe California, more of a tech hub, 41% of the graduates went to work for a tech company. So a huge amount of graduates are going to work at tech companies. This is from all MBAs. Look at INSEAD, IE Madrid, and Wharton. Okay, so in some schools it might be 25%, it might be 30%, it might be 20%. It doesn't really matter because it's the same employers. I'll show you in the next slide all our employers. If I continue anti-clockwise from some silly reason, so the gray is finance. And again, it depends which school. This is actually going down a bit. So historically, around 30 to 40% of MBAs used to go to finance. Today, the numbers are around 20, 25%. So again, this is a big sector. And a very big sector, a third big sector is consulting. That's our orange, red, whatever you can see at the top. And so again, these are the three big sectors today: finance, technology, and consulting. What are the green and the blue? The green is entrepreneurship. And usually MBAs, after 2 years, usually a big portion, a big number, a big percentage of graduates from MBAs open companies, huge numbers. It can be 10%, 15%. A lot of times it's not directly after the MBA because the return on investment, they want to work a few years. And, we have to pay these loans somehow. But a lot of times after 2, 3, 4 years, a lot of MBAs just open ventures. What is the blue? It's kind of all the rest. Okay, so again, I apologize for this graphics. The blue is other, okay, all the rest. Industry, okay, if you go and work for Walmart, if you go and work for Procter & Gamble, if you go and work for a little startup, if you go and work for a book company, a book publisher, okay, so if you go and work for the UN, if you go for a non-government organization, okay, so all these go into the blue, and again, that's a very big proportion. So it's very hard for me to say, are these 20% each, or is it 25% for finance and 30% consulting? And because this does change between the schools, but what changes is very small numbers. Okay, what changes is consulting 30% or is consulting 25%? And a lot of times candidates come to me and say, well, I only want Kellogg and MIT because I saw their consulting rates are much higher than the other schools. And then I said, okay, which other school did you look at? And they're saying, Columbia. And then we look together and we see Columbia's #1 recruiter was McKinsey, a consulting firm. And 26% of Columbia graduates went to consulting. And Kellogg, the school that my candidate wanted to go to, 31% went to consulting. Wow, what a huge difference. Kind of the same. So there isn't 1 or 2 or 5 specific schools where consulting is stronger. There isn't one school where finance is stronger. There are schools that are in a finance hub, New York, Philadelphia, London. There are schools which are in a technology hub, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York again. But again, I've seen people go to Google from IE Madrid, and I've seen people go to finance from Berkeley. Okay, so all schools, all recruiters, all industries, very, very similar. Let's just look at London Business School, for example. And if you see my slide about London Business School, you will see that these recruiters are very, very, very similar. Thanks for correcting me, Facebook Meta. These recruiters are very similar to the recruiters that you would see on Columbia presentation, or on I don't know which, MIT presentation. So we have Google and we have Amazon and we have our tech companies. We have consulting firms like McKinsey and BCG and Deloitte. We have investment banking firms like Deutsche. We have industry firms like PepsiCo, General Electric, okay, industry firms. We have hospitality firms here, right? Airbnb, Expedia, etc. Finance, yes, etc. So you'll see the same kind of brands recruiting from all the top schools, okay? You won't see these brands recruiting from a very lower ranked school, but from the top 10, you'll see all of this. So that was my point, that there isn't a huge difference. If you're just looking at your post-MBA recruitment between the top schools, the main difference is the location. I just gave here some examples. I'm not going to dig into this. We have another presentation in 2 weeks, MBA Careers, okay? If someone, if you are interested in one of these jobs, I would like to learn in the chat. So, if you know what you're looking for post MBA? So I just put here like consulting, marketing, finance in two ways, investment banking or kind of a finance manager in a big, industry company, or if you're more in operations or something like that. So I should have put here product manager as well, which I didn't. But I would love to know what you're interested in, and I can go into that a bit more. But basically, you can see here typical kind of roles for post MBAs, and I'll show you the salaries shortly. Very, very similar salaries. So if you can write in the chat what interests you, here are the names of the top recruiters. And what's amazing is these top recruiters are completely identical. I don't even know where I took this slide from. Maybe from Northwestern because I have the logo. Myra, thanks, tech related. So let's look at the tech giants. Okay, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple. These are just some of the companies that recruit from all top 10 MBA programs, all of them. As a product manager, yeah, that would be the role. I just put here what we call MBB, McKinsey, Bain, Boston Consulting Group, consulting firms. There's many more consulting firms that recruit from all top MBA programs. I put here some financial institutions. I put here some fast-moving consumer goods companies. I can't even see, so many big companies I can't see here on the list. Okay, and you're right. I didn't put nonprofit. I didn't put a World Bank. I didn't put here a lot of industry companies. Okay, what did I say before? Book publisher. But there is that from all top MBA programs. And again, these are the big recruiters. Again, you choose whichever top school randomly. Wharton, randomly. Out of these, how many companies are here? I don't know, 18, 17? These are 17 out of the top 20 companies that are recruiting at Wharton. London Business School, same companies. Okay, and yes, there might be one or two additional ones as well, but these are the main companies. Okay, let's talk about the money a bit, okay? I put here even more. I did put here startups. I don't know if Airbnb and Uber are startups, okay? But there's so many other sectors. And again, great example, Isle of Canaan, Ali. So pharma companies, if you want an HR job, etc. Again, these may not be in the big pie, yes, of the 30% going to consulting, which is actually an advantage for you. That means you're trying to get into a job. It's maybe more rare, but also less competition. So actually, it's good, and you can get into top jobs like that. Okay, let's look a bit about the money, and then I think my next 3 slides are different calculations, and then I'm here for questions. And that was it. So I think, again, we kind of we looked at the costs a bit, and these calculations are a bit old. I'll show you in the next one another data source. These data sources are from 2018 graduates. So these people graduated already 4 years ago. So the data is a bit old. And these post-MBA salaries are before bonuses. There are bonuses. Before stocks and shares and options. There are stocks and shares and options. Before promotions. There are promotions. Okay, this is the basic starting salary. It's not the salary that you'll earn. It's what's written in your contract before the rest of the other bullets. As you can see, the salaries are quite similar. So whether you go to Austin, or you go to Foster, Seattle, or you go to Harvard Business School, the salaries aren't 100% different between these schools. I'll show you Isle of Canaan. I'll show you in the next slide like the total amount of the salary. And you're right, the starting salary is higher than this. Again, this is the basic salary before things 4 years ago. So you're absolutely right, the salaries are higher. And still, you can come back to me and say, Shimri, but still Harvard is 158 and Chicago Booth is 151, so I only want to go to Harvard. But what about the cost of living in Boston versus the cost of living in Chicago? I'm assuming it's about $8,000 a year. And the reason I'm assuming that is it's the same McKinsey. You're going to work in the same job, okay? Hopefully, from these two. And your cost of living will be a bit different. So maybe the salary will be a bit different, but you'll earn probably very similar salaries. Austin, okay, it's much cheaper to live in Austin than to live in San Francisco. If I look at the European salaries, very, very similar numbers. And Again, this is old data with old euro, dollar, stuff. So very high salaries. And again, to live in most of the places in Europe is cheaper than to live in most of the places in the US. So remember, cost of living can also be a bit cheaper. Okay, let's plug in the numbers. So we kind of know what the cost is. We kind of know what I'm going to be earning. And let's plug in some numbers. So I put here, this is more recent numbers. And I remember, Jigar, I'm talking about full-time MBA programs. That's actually a good time to pause a second and mention that. Executive MBAs, the salary ranges are very different because people come with 8 years experience and people come with 30 years of experience. In addition, around 50% of people in executive MBAs are sponsored by their company and they keep working in their company and they don't have this whole return on investment issue. So it's very hard to do a return on investment executive MBA discussion. But in about 4 slides, you'll see my email. Send me your details and we can discuss it privately. But this discussion is just about full-time regular MBA programs. So I went into some data and I looked today, 2022, how much is the total salary from top MBA programs in the US, by the way, but in Europe, it won't be very different. And as you can see, the total salary, and you're right, the salaries are a bit higher than what we saw before. Plus, if we take sign-up bonus, there's usually a sign-up bonus, relocation bonus, if you have a family, etc., usually you get that, stocks, options, whatever. As you can see, the salaries are much higher than mentioned before. They can be anywhere between $220,000 to $250,000. This is the total salary, the first year post-MBA. Okay, let's plug in the numbers. Let's see how it works. So, by the way, what I want to say is on our site, aringo.com, you can look for it. There's an MBA return on investment calculator. I put here the link. You can try and copy it or just do Aringo ROI and you will find this calculator. And it's fun. You can plug in where you want to study, where do you want to work post-MBA, and it will, again, give you kind of a number of how many years it will take you to get your return on investment. Correct regarding, wow, this is $250,000. That is correct. Okay, let's talk about 2 different methods. By the way, I have 3 more slides, but I'm going to talk slower because this is kind of the numbers. Let's talk about 2 different methods of return on investment. Okay, so the first method, I'll take you through it, but my main assumption is that I'm not looking at the total salary. Okay, I'm not looking at that because it doesn't matter what the total salary is. It matters what's the difference between my pre-MBA salary and my post-MBA salary. Yes, by the way, I can't post anything. I'm sorry, but I'll ask GMAT Club to post here the link for the calculator. It will be posted here a bit lower. So again, so this slide will calculate the real calculations. If you're an accountant, this is the real return on investment calculation, which takes into account not your total salary post-MBA, but the total difference in the salary. Okay, so let's make an assumption that you were making $100,000 a year, and post-MBA, you can make $220,000. Okay, so again, this is for your Excel. This is another way to do the Excel. And you decide, is the salary difference $100,000? Is it $80,000? Is it $50,000? Is it $150,000? Maybe you come from a country where you don't earn so much. And in the US, you might work in the US post your MBA at Stanford or in Columbia. So I took here into account that the difference would be $120,000. Another assumption is that you have an identical living expenses. And again, might be a wrong assumption. That means if you're living today in San Francisco and you're working for Google, and tomorrow you're going to do your Stanford MBA, you're going to stay in your same flat and you're going to eat your same lunch. So your living expenses, I could put them here, but on the other hand, what about your old living expenses? So I didn't put a number here, but again, if you're coming from New Delhi and you're moving to New York, yes, there is a difference between a couple thousand, maybe $10,000 a year to live in New Delhi and $40,000 a year to live in New York. So definitely add another line for your living expenses difference between before MBA and post MBA. Okay, So the cost of this specific MBA would be $154,000 for the tuition. Remember, I didn't put living expenses because I took into account that you don't have a difference in your living expenses. You're losing 2 years of salary, right? You're losing $200,000. So the cost of your MBA in this specific example would be $354,000. So whoever said wow before on $250,000, you forgot that you're actually losing your salary. So the wow could be $354,000. And if you add the cost of living, it can be even $400,000. Okay, so the wow is much, 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 much wower, much higher. By the way, I've exaggerated in this example, but let's make the numbers a bit smaller. If you do an internship, and all MBAs, all 2-year MBAs in the US, or 95% do an internship, you will get money in the internship. If you, at the end of the internship, get a job offer, you will get a sign-up bonus at the end of the first year already. MBAs usually start in September, finish in June. So it's not 2 years, it's 1 year and 9 months. If you start working post-MBA in July, you'll only work half a year and you'll pay less tax. Okay, because your yearly tax will be lower because you'll only work half a year. So I didn't take into account anything of this. Okay, but obviously your Excel, make it as long as you want. Add tax, add that you're an internship, add, I don't know, you only eat McDonald's or you want to live in a penthouse. You add your factors into here. But in this specific case, I said no living expenses because I was living anyway. So it's the same living expenses as before. The salary difference is $100,000. The total salary loss is $200,000. The tuition is $154,000. Hence, my cost is $354,000. Post MBA, I'm going to make $120,000 more than I was going to make before my MBA. Hence, it'll take me 3 years to return the investment. There's so many other ways. And by the way, this is very modest, okay? Because what about my salary increase? And post MBAs, there's a lot of salary increases. What about a nice, unexpected bonus? What about company stock, etc.? Like, I didn't take these things into account. There's a lot of upside. What happens if I start a startup after 5 years? Okay. And again, I didn't factor here friendship, experience, self-growth, anything. I just put some numbers and I got to 3 years. You think my numbers are wrong? Fine, 4 years. You think my numbers are conservative? Fine, 2 years. Does it really matter? Okay. Let's look at another way to calculate living expenses. Okay. Here I did it a bit differently. Okay. Here I said, okay, I don't mind the salary loss during my MBA. Okay, I won't work for 2 years. I'm taking this into account. My main problem is to fund these 2 years. My main problem is how, I need this money. What I Love Can said before, I need $250,000 now to fund this MBA. How am I going to do that? So in this specific case, actually, I did take this is a different way. I added the living expenses. Sorry, now I remember what I did. I added the living expenses. I said before I was living with my parents. I didn't have any living expenses. They paid for my accommodation. They cooked for me. They did my washing. I never went out of the house. I had 0 living expenses before. And here I have living expenses, okay, of Stanford. And again, it's the same calculation like before. I just added the living expenses. Okay, and we said I'm earning 220 now. I was earning 100. So in this specific case, it's going to cost me the return on investment 3.6 years. Wow. So what? Okay, now I know you might not have this kind of money, but you can borrow it. And as you can see, the return on investment is pretty much a sure thing because you will be able to get a top job at these salaries if you go to a top 10 MBA program. Okay, here's my different calculation. And here I didn't take a return on investment. I took more of a return on MBA cost. And in this specific case of return on MBA cost, it's what I was saying before. I less care about the loss of my 2 years not earning any money. I just want to know, I want to take into account how long will it take me to cover this MBA. But I want the full calculation with the tax, with the cost of living, everything. So in this case, again, I took $220,000 as a starting salary, as an annual salary. And I went for Stanford, which the total living expenses is $240,000. Okay. But in this calculation, I took the tax, and I added living expenses post MBA. Okay, so what I said was I'm going to have to live 2 years in Stanford, in San Francisco. It's going to cost me $240,000. I'm going to find a great job in New York afterwards. I'm going to make 220, but I'm going to have to live in New York. That's expensive. I'm going to have to pay tax. And again, I didn't take things into account, like if I work half a year, do I pay for tax? I didn't take care of lots of things, but never mind. And as you can see, I took off the $220,000, $60,000 tax, and I took for New York $50,000 living expenses post MBA. But still, in this calculation, as you can see, the return on my MBA cost is around 2.5 years. And again, you want to live in a penthouse, add $20,000. You want to eat McDonald's, take off $5,000. I mean, you can make the Excel for yourself. You can go into any tax calculator. You can take any calculation that you want. The numbers will be kind of similar. So it'll take 3 years to cover it. It'll take 2 years. And again, on purpose, I took the US schools, because the European schools, the return on investment is much, much quicker, because I only lose 1 year of salary. I only pay total tuition and living expenses of $100,000 to $150,000. I will be working in similar salaries, and my cost of living will probably be less. So I only took the US, not because it's a good example, because it's a bad example, and the return on investment is slower. So those were the numbers. This is my last slide. Okay, what I really want you to do, and this is for advanced users for this YouTube discussion, is forget about all the last 30 slides. Forget about the money. You don't have any money, and an MBA is very, very expensive. Is it $250,000? Is it 350? Is it 100? It depends how you calculate it, but an MBA is worth it. The return on investment, the financial one, is returned. Does it take 3 years? Does it take 4 years? Fine. It doesn't matter. There's so many other factors that you're going to gain doing a top MBA program. Okay, we discussed this, like your personal development, finding out what you want to do when you grow up, and of course, making your skill set more advanced. Okay, getting this new knowledge, new experience about industries you don't even know about. Okay, again, I don't know your backgrounds, but I'm sure that everybody on this discussion doesn't know everything about pharma, about oil and gas, about clean energy, consulting, strategy, corporate finance, etc., etc. And an MBA will give you a very wide set of skill sets and a very wide knowledge base for a lot of different industries. Again, the networking opportunities are amazing. Friendship opportunities. I have friends from all the world. Business opportunities, friendship opportunities, international experiences and international opportunities post MBA. All this is lifelong. How do I put a number for these things? Okay, is this slide worth $100,000, $200,000, 10 million? I don't know. You need to decide. The last bullet here, it's hard to see brand recognition. Again, for me, in 30 years, I might come to someone and say, hey, I'm a London Business School alumnus. That means something. And again, I have the network of over 20,000, MBAs from London Business School. That's just from my business school, of course, with other business schools as well. This is something that stays for life. It's not a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year thing. So all these things stay for life. Is an MBA worth it? Yes, yes, yes. I hope I persuaded you about the financials, but I don't really care about them because it's worth it financially. Now understand that these things are the ones that matter. I think that was kind of it. I will put a slide in the comments. I'll ask GMAT Club to put the link for the return on investment calculation. By the way, we have a few calculators on our website. Some of them are, we have a chances calculator, we have a return on investment, we have an MBA cost calculator. So check us out on aringo.com. This is my email. I'm always happy to answer specific questions about your profile, but always please send me your CV and GMAT so I can help you as much as possible. I think that was the entire presentation, and I'm going to look at the chat. If there's any questions, happy to answer any questions. I'm going to sit for my tea and look at the chat. Whoever wants to drop off, I was Shimri. Thank you very much. Good luck. Hey, let's look. So if there are any questions, again, I'm sorry I can't put the link, but GMAT Club will add this link to the chat. Let's see if we have any questions on the chat. If not, thank you very much. That's all maybe I can say. This was the first time I've done a return on investment video. And it's the first time I've done a video where the first comment I say is, forget everything I'm going to say because the money is less important. But I hope you enjoyed it. And again, if you have specific questions about your profile, please contact me personally. You have my email address, shamriw@aringo.com. I will ask GMAT Club to put that on the chat as well. And visit us on aringo.com. And thanks. I really enjoyed this. And you were very active on the chat throughout the presentation. So that was great. And good luck at your GMAT. And then good luck with your applications. And good luck with a top MBA program. So thanks a lot. And bye, everyone.